Hi guys, Olive here. Here today to give you some advice about how you can read more books in the new year. It's resolution season, and for many of us, reading is something we would like to do more of. And why wouldn't we? Reading is good for our brains, it helps build vocabulary, it's been shown in studies to increase the empathy we feel toward other people, and it's just a fun way to spend time. But with all the demands of modern life, it can be really hard to find time to read as much as we would like to. So, in today's video, I'm going to give you some pieces of advice, coming from someone who reads over 100 books a year, on how you can make reading a bigger part of your life this year. So let's start with the first section, what you read. When you're first getting started in the reading world, it can be really tempting to start with one of those books to read before you're a certain age or books to read before you die types of lists. They're a very convenient place to start, but I would actually highly recommend you don't start there. Those types of lists can be very motivating, but I would only suggest you take one of them on when reading is already a part of your everyday life and you're used to reading those kinds of books. Because those types of lists tend to be very classics heavy. And while the classics are wonderful, they're definitely worth reading. I love the classics. It can take some time getting used to the language used within the classics. I know it took me some time to get used to. There tend to be a lot of books on those lists that I like to call aspirational books. Books that you work your way up to, but not necessarily books that you start with if you're new to reading or you're looking to make it a habit. An architecture student may enter school hoping someday to design their own Sistine Chapel, but it's probably not going to be their first project. Starting with a book like Ulysses or Swan's Way may seem like a really good challenge, but I think there's a high likelihood that you're going to scare yourself off of reading altogether if you start there. Let me assure you, the books on those lists are wonderful, but they're not the only books worth reading. I think sometimes we get caught up in the idea of what we should be reading, when I do think it's a lot better to start with what we want to be reading. But you may be asking, if I'm not going to start with one of those highly accessible lists, then how am I ever going to pick books that I'm going to start with? Great question. I suggest you start exactly where you are. And by that I mean you spend some time thinking about what it is you really enjoy. And a great place to start investigating that is in the media that you're already consuming. Is there a podcast that you've been listening to a lot lately? A movie that you've really liked? A TV show you can't get enough of? If you think about the genres that you're already enjoying, I can almost promise you there's a book for that. Finding good books to start with could be as simple as a Google search. Best mystery books of the year if you find you like mysteries. Books to read if you like this TV show or that movie. Or if you've read a book or a handful of books that you really enjoyed, you can use that information to get even more book suggestions. There's a whole website called whatshouldireadnext.com where you can input the name of a book that you really enjoyed and it'll spit back names of titles that are somewhat similar. There's also a whole subreddit over on Reddit for book suggestions that I talked about in a video I did a very long time ago. You can let the algorithms of Goodreads, Storygraph, or any other bookish social media platform give you recommendations, or if you'd prefer to receive your recommendations from a person, it's pretty easy to find bookish content creators around the internets. You can search the title of a book that you really loved, or a genre that you know you like as a hashtag on Instagram or TikTok. If there's one book that you know you really love and want to read similar books to, you can search the title of that book here on YouTube to see if anyone else has read and reviewed it. Finding influencers like us here on BookTube, or podcasters, or even celebrities who make their reading public can be a great way to discover new books, or you can join a book club, whether it be online or in person. And of course, a great option is going to your library if you have one. And if you don't have a card, be sure to get one. A lot of libraries now have digital resources, so you can check out ebooks or e-audiobooks from the comfort of your home. But a really good option if you just want to find something new to read is to actually go into a physical branch of the library, because browsing the stacks, picking something at random or from a staff recommendation section can always be such a good time. And of course, if you're really struggling to find that next book to read, you can always ask a librarian. They are fantastic people to talk to about books. But let's say you've done all of that and you now have your books that you want to read, or maybe you started off already knowing what books you want to read. Now what? In this next section, I'm going to talk about what I recommend you do when you read. And in this section, it doesn't matter if you're brand new to pleasure reading or if you're a veteran, all the advice still applies. The simple fact is, if you would like to read more, then you have to commit time to it. And if you would like to make it a habit, then you have to commit time to it on a regular basis. As a reader, when I talk to people about my reading and how much I read, sometimes people will tell me, oh, I would love to read more. I would love to read like you do, but I just don't have the time. And we all lead very busy lives, that is for sure. But I wonder sometimes if those people who express that desire to read more really sat down and thought about the way they spend their time right now. Could they fit in some reading time? What happens to all that time that we're watching TV, watching Netflix, scrolling through our phones? That could be reading time if we want it to be. Not all of it has to go to reading. I actually would not suggest that you hand over all of your free time to reading right away. I think a much more gradual shift is better. And I also think balance is something really important. I don't think you should spend every second reading. I know I certainly don't. But there are no shortcuts here. There are no life hacks. I wish there were. But if we want to read more, then we have to commit time to doing it. A good way to do this is to have a daily cap on your phone time, your TV time, your video game time, whatever it may be, and to have a daily goal for your reading, whether that be a certain number of pages you would like to read every single day or a certain amount of time you would like to spend reading every single day. But I can't stress this enough. Please make that goal reasonable to begin with. You can always build on that goal. You can always work your way up, and you will, trust me. But starting off, your goal needs to be something around your current level, but with a little bit of a challenge thrown in there. So let's say you think you could easily read 30 pages a day. Maybe make your daily goal 35 pages. Also, to help you get in the habit of reading, I definitely recommend you start carrying a book around with you. That way, in any downtime you have, you can pick up your book and read a couple of pages. That might not seem like a lot, but it adds up over time. Or, since your phone is probably always on you anyway, why not get an e-reader app and maybe check out some ebooks from the library or buy some? That way, anytime you spend on your phone that maybe you're checking apps that you've already checked that day, there's nothing left to do on your phone, you could start reading. So let's say you have your book and you have the time to read it. Now what? Let's talk about how you read. So you've set aside the time to read. Now you need to remove distractions if at all possible. Get to the quietest place you can find. And this is probably the most important part. Get your devices away from you. If you need to be done reading at a specific time, then set an alarm on your phone and then get it away from you. If you're reading on a device, make sure you're only using it for reading. You're not looking at anything else. You're not doing anything else besides reading. You have to treat your reading time as sacred. If it helps you, think about your reading time as your you time. I know I definitely do that. What I really enjoy doing these days is finding some sort of ambiance, some ambient noise that somehow relates to my book, and I stream it using this little Bluetooth speaker that I have so I can get my phone far away from me. I have so much fun matching that ambient noise to my book and creating the whole atmosphere for myself. It makes my reading time something I really look forward to. If you're just starting off, you might find it helpful to keep a notebook nearby as you read, so you can jot down some things about plot points or character names, anything you want to remember as you go through the book. You may find you need that less and less over time, but it definitely can help you retain what you read. I also definitely recommend using sticky notes or those little sticky tabs to highlight important parts of the book or any parts you really liked. And when it comes to the format of what you're reading, of course, print books, physical books are an option if you own any or if you have access to a library, but I would also really suggest you check out ebooks. I know they're not the same as holding a physical book in your hands, but the ebook experience is such a customizable experience. You can change the color of the background, you can go into dark mode, you can make the text bigger or smaller depending on what you like and what your eyes can handle. You can highlight words on the page and search them directly in the dictionary. You can take notes on what you read directly within the ebook, I have found that I read so much more and so much faster since falling in love with ebooks. And if they're available to you, I would also highly recommend trying audiobooks, especially to introduce anything unfamiliar. I was not an English major in school. I did not study literature. And so, like I said before, the language of the classics initially was very intimidating to me. But listening to Jane Eyre on audiobook changed everything for me. It allowed me to hear the music of the language and get used to it. And now reading classics is no problem. And with both ebooks and audiobooks, like I said before, if your library has digital resources, then your library card could entitle you to check out a certain number of ebooks and audiobooks every single month. And now in the final section, let's talk about what you can do when you're not reading, what you can do when you're done reading, all the things you can do to motivate yourself. The first thing I definitely suggest you do is to celebrate every book you finish. Do something to make finishing that book feel really special. At the start, maybe you want to give yourself a little piece of chocolate or whatever it is you like as a little treat for yourself, as a reward for finishing a book. Or you could have a little ritual, something that you do when you finish a book. Maybe you keep a book journal this year and you make an entry every single time you finish a book. Or you make a Goodreads or a Storygraph account and you leave a review for that book when you've finished. Or maybe you decide to create a bookish Instagram account and you take a picture of that book when you're done and you include a fun caption or a review where the caption would go. Whatever it is you do, just make sure you're allowing yourself to fall in love with the process of finding a book, starting a book, and then finishing a book. There is so much love in that process. And the more you allow yourself to fall in love with it, the less you make this feel like something you have to do, and the more you make it feel like something you want to do, the better you will do. If you want to set a specific goal for yourself for the year, like a number of books you would like to read, that's fine. It can be a good motivator, but I actually would recommend you hold off on doing that until your second year of reading on a regular basis. Because until you've gone through that first year, it's hard to know what will be an achievable goal. And if you set it to something that ends up being too high, that can end up making you feel really discouraged or disappointed in yourself, and we really want to minimize that as we're trying to make this into a habit. A good way to add a challenge while also building in some flexibility is to take on a yearly challenge list. And not like the challenge lists like I was talking about at the beginning of the video, but one that's more general in which you get to pick the books. I know websites like PopSugar and Book Riot always have really good ones, but if you wanted something different, you can always go to Google and type in the year that you're searching for, plus book challenge or reading challenge, and it'll help you find some good ones. Just remember though that you're using it for fun. You're using it for a good challenge. And if it's not working for you at any point during the year, do not be afraid to change course. Getting involved in the book world in real life and or here online is also a great way just to keep books on the brain. So if you like podcasts, start listening to a bookish podcast. You can look at the book reviews or book recommendations sections of websites and newspapers. You can subscribe to a book YouTube channel, mine or anybody else's. You can follow bookish people on Instagram and TikTok. Wherever you are online, wherever you are on social media, start incorporating more bookish things in there so books start becoming more a part of your day-to-day life. And finally, and this may be the most important thing I say in this entire video, understand that it takes time and it takes practice in order to read quickly, to read deeply. There is no magic wand. There are no tricks. It just comes down to practice. And I really do feel like I'm proof of that because back in 2013, I struggled to read 35 books in a calendar year, and now I read over 100 per year without even really trying. It just takes time. You will get better at it, I promise. Give reading the time and attention that you can afford to give it, and soon enough, you will be devouring books faster than you ever thought possible. So that's my advice for reading more books. I know it was more on the practical side than it was the instant gratification side, but that's just kind of who I am. I hope this was helpful. If you have any of your own tips, things that have maybe worked for you, I would love to hear what those are in the comment section below. And if you would like to keep up with what I am reading and writing about right now, maybe get some book ideas that way, you can find me on a variety of places around the internet, including Goodreads and Instagram, and the links to everywhere you can find me will be at the bottom of the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.